Steve, I hope you're well. How are you doing? Subscribe, like, all this stuff. Easy ambient drones. Let's get into it. Now I've got 5 different ways of doing this, technically 4 because the 5th one's just banging them all together. Number 1 is really ambient easy mode, and this is Emit, and it's a Max for Live free device. You can get it from the packs downloaded if you've got Ableton Suite, or I don't know how much it costs to buy or anything like that, but it is in the Inspired by Nature pack and instruments. You have Emit. So I've dragged that in and I'm using an audio sample, just this, which is just a pad that I made in Reason, because I've got a lot of ambient pads that I made in Reason over the years there, because I've only been using Ableton for a year and a bit. Dragged that into Emit. So we've got our emitter there, made it a little bit bigger, and to use Emit, all we have to do is play the transport. It doesn't actually play with a note, so you can see what's happening there. We've got these grains. It's a granular synthesizer. I'm going to up the grains. The burst will up to 2, possibly actually 3 for that one. The rate will keep the same. Now I'm going to go to emitter 2. I'm going to put that pretty much on the same level, because you'll notice if we move it up a level, it moves up into the higher frequency ranges, but we're going to be able to use that to create a really cool effect. So if I drag that down there, this one has already got 5 grains. Let's put a 3 burst on that. The rate's slightly higher. All good. Now, that's not really setting the world alight at the minute, is it? But you put on the Valhalla Supermassive free download using the 60% of Infinity, which is what I've got for all of this, but taking the feedback down a little bit, because the feedback at 95% was absolutely mad, and you just kind of stop the thing from going. So put that through here, and then all of a sudden, those little sort of jerky things that are going on in the background interplay incredibly well with the reverb, and you get this beautiful lush sound. And what we can do with that, I'm going to go over to, just re-enable the automation. If I go click on Emit, we want to actually affect the levels of these emitters. So I do that, we can see that emitter position Y is the first thing I want to do, and I want to have that relatively low to start off with, and then it's going to finish somewhere up there. And we also want number 2 position Y, and that's going to start off relatively low and again finish up there. So what that does is, over the course of time, if we enable automation, we've now got a fairly deep low track. But if I move that on, you'll see the emitters have moved up a bit, and the sound that's coming through has got a lot more high frequency content in it. So you can use this in a huge ambient piece, and over time you can vary what's happening. You can totally change the nature, the timbre of the sound. It's a fantastic device, and like I say, totally easy mode, absolutely brilliant to use. So I'll turn the Valhalla off because it'll take about half an hour to stop, and we'll move on to number 2. And this is all about modulating layers. So I put a few things in already. I'll talk you through them and I'll add another one to it. Got the Valhalla Supermassive again. We've got an analog, and the only thing I've done with the analog is detuned by 0.02 that second oscillator. Because they're so close together in frequencies, what that does is creates natural oscillation up and down the waveform, because the frequencies are so close together that they start interfering with each other. And what that does, if I hold down a key, you can hear that interference going on in the background there. And I've got a wavetable in here. I've got 2 sawtooth waveforms, and you can see in the modulation matrix I have oscillator 1 position with envelope 2, which is just going up, down, and it's on a loop. So that's taking that up and down. LFO2 is going to warp and fold on oscillator 1, and same for the pulse width and sync for oscillator 2. So you get this nice sort of wide changing waveform, a lot of modulation in again and width. And in the third one, I've got the same thing again, position and warp, position, fold and FM amount, so we've got a slightly sort of low tone going on there. And then we're going to add another wavetable. Now I'm going to pop one of the vintage forms on this. Let's go for the Log Saw Distorted. Nice. So what we're going to do is pop that up, and in the modulation matrix I'm going to drag this to say 1.62-ish, take the release rate down, enable the loop, and then that envelope 2 is going to modulate the wave position. So I grab that wave, you see oscillator 1 position, envelope 2. Now you spot the deliberate mistake, I did milliseconds instead of seconds. So we'll drag that up, and that cycles up and down through the waveform because it's on a loop, it's doing it all the time. And we are going to add some effects to that. I think I'm going to put on the classic, the pulse width. So we'll grab that, put that on LFO1, we'll just drag that down a little bit so it's more subtle. And LFO2 we'll drag down to slightly faster, and we'll pop that onto the sync. Now if we put that through the Supermassive, it's a great sound, but if we unsolo that and add everything else, play a big chord, change to something else. Beautiful. Turn that off, and what all that modulation does, it's constantly changing it, and it gives, like, again, it interplays with the reverb really well, bounces off all the artificial surfaces going in there, creates a fantastic sound. So if we move on to number 3, this is all about width and noise. So we're using chorus on that wavetable there. We're going to add another wavetable, and on this wavetable we want noise oscillators. So we use swept noise as the first one, turn on the second one, and we will use, let's go for redux noise. Click on the triangle to make that bigger, and we are going to sweep up and down the noise using exactly the same thing that we did the last time. We'll just take all of those down, pop the loop onto that. I'll just start to make that more linear, and then we'll assign that to oscillator 1 position, and then oscillator 2 position. And if we play that, now we want to add a chorus onto that as well. So I'm just going to drag that one in there, hold down Option, drag it in. We're going to have the rate down, put the dry wet up. Now this doesn't want to be too loud because it wants to be sitting on the edge of the other one. It doesn't want to be prominent. Put the feedback up a bit there. Probably pop it down a little bit, and then we've got another chorus outside there, so there's a lot of chorus going on to give us a real width to the sound. We pop the Supermassive on that and play a 4-note chord. Turn it off. And you can hear that noise is really creating, because it's so chaotic, the sound, the way it is, it's creating so many reflections and things going on. It's got a fantastic sound to it. So number 4, and this is going to be using arpeggios. So the first thing I'm going to do is grab the MIDI arpeggiator. I'm going to pop it to 1/6 because we've got 120 BPM because it's just a standard setup. And I'm going to bring in an operator. And for this, I'm going to click on the algorithm. And I'm going to go for this one where they don't interfere with each other, so you're just getting all of them side by side. Pop these all up, and if I hold these down, what I'm going to do is increase the coarse tuning, which is the multiplication. So now we've got a little bit of variation going on there. Not particularly interesting in and of itself, but when you put that through the Supermassive, just a beautiful sound that. Turn that off. So what we can do with this is, I'll probably speed it up actually to 1/8. We can change the wave shapes on that. So instead of a sine, we'll pop that to a saw. And this one, instead of a sine, we'll pop it to a square 64. So now we've got a lot more variation in the sound. But a cool thing to do on this is to group open up the macros, and we'll right click and map each of those wave shapes to a macro. Now what we can do is use random and change it around. So if you're using that, I'll turn this off. If you're using the random, it actually creates, because it takes so long for them to get processed through that huge reverb, it actually creates this real nice change and variation to the sound. And because on here, at the top end, they're all noise based. So if you change it all and set up some random variations where you go to a noise based, something like that. You end up where you can have these really nice, beautiful sort of change and atmospheres going on. So you can get some really, really cool sounds with a really, really simple thing. So number 4 is mash up an experiment. And basically this is just taking all the things that were put into this, banging them together in any order you see fit and seeing what happens. And generally you can get some really, really nice sounds because all the techniques complement and they all work really nice. So if I just grab in a few things, I may have to fast forward this bit because it'll be quite boring to just watch me drag things in. So I've dragged everything in, I've sort of balanced the volume levels a little bit. It sounds like this. And if we put on the supermassive for that, play some 4-note chords, something cinematic. And we stop it. Instant ambient goodness. Thank you very much for watching. Hope this has inspired you to get stuck into this. I'm just going to give you this project to have a little play around with. You can download the Supermassive for free if you haven't already got it. If you haven't got the Emit, you can try another Granular synth. As you watch this, it's pre-recorded. I am currently in Amsterdam on a stag do, so if I'm still alive next week, I'll see you then.